Let's bring in Robert Costa for the Washington Post. Robert, you've been on the show enough to know where we're at here. We've been trying to track the relationship, this attempt to build a relationship to the new Trump team coming from Russia. They clearly, according to the latest reporting and the CIA investigations, have been trying to reach Trump through Manafort, who has had long-standing relations with financially with the Russians, and of course, then more recently with Flynn, who they gave $34,000 to work out a little deal with RT, the propaganda arm there. And now apparently we're seeing now something under scrutiny with regard to Kushner, who had his own marching orders from Trump to go meet with the Russian ambassador, to meet with the Russian bank president. What is this from both ends? Explain how it meets in the middle, if it does.
It meets in the middle in this sense. The Russians, especially Russian diplomats, are under high scrutiny from the intelligence community, the U.S. intelligence community, who are always monitoring their activities. That's why sometimes different news organizations are able to report out transcripts. And then you had the Russian interference, which included building relationships with the Trump campaign, asking for disruption, pushing for disruption in the U.S. election. And those two things collided. The relationship building on the Russian side and the intelligence community monitoring of the Russians on the other. And it's led to these Kushner meetings coming under the spotlight. The Trump campaign and now the Trump White House insists they were fine, but these meetings are highly charged regardless of the context of how they were put together.
What do you think is the Trump ambition? Why does his son-in-law get detailed by the father-in-law to meet with the Russian ambassador? He had no official position. He's meeting with the bank president. It had to do with, well, I just can't understand any other conversation except something to do with relieving sanctions, which the Russians want done under this new president.
President's never been in elected office. It's the same question of why was Ivanka Trump part of a meeting with the Japanese prime minister at Trump Tower during the transition. The president has long run a family organization. He thinks in terms of a family organization. Every time I've been with him for an interview, it's usually Ivanka's there or Jared's there. Those are his confidants. Those are his advisors, also part of the family.
Well, what about the propriety of this question? Because the fact that the FBI is looking at this is they're looking at meetings, obviously looking at conversations, probably not acts, discussions held perhaps since the election, perhaps before the election. But the fact that this story got out in your paper, got out because of NBC News, our lead item tonight on the Nightly News was this story, tells me it's big. Your assessment of what it means to have the president's son-in-law, and he has, by the way, the office, I just saw the floor plan. He's basically sitting next to the president all day on the West Wing first floor. This is a powerful guy in a very, very critical position, and now he's under the FBI spotlight.
It's very significant because for a long time we've had this kind of messy picture in front of us with the congressional investigations ongoing, the federal probe ongoing, directed by the Justice Department. Now with Bob Mueller as special counsel, you have the probe picking up speed. And the key part of this Washington Post article, and I'm sure NBC News reported as well, is that congressional leaders have been briefed about a change in the pace and the scope of this investigation. And that, tonight, everyone was able to report, includes expanding the person of interest to Jared Kushner. That means Mueller, who's now running the investigation, based on our sources, yours and ours, is looking at Kushner as a key part of this investigation, maybe even his financial relationships with Russian figures.
Well, go through that list. I'm familiar with the one with the bank president, with Kislyak. How many other times has he met with Russians recently in the capacity of his son-in-law, the president?
It is in that capacity. He is supposed to disclose those meetings, including those that happened during the transition in the campaign. As you remember, multiple news organizations reported that Kushner had to revise his form with the federal government about who he met with and how he met with them, and that included meetings with Russian officials. And so his meetings as a senior advisor are somewhat unclear, though he's deeply involved in foreign policy. What matters is what did he do during the campaign? What did he do during the transition? What were the extent of his conversations on financial dealings internationally? And what kind of promises or comments did he make to Russian officials that perhaps were picked up in these intelligence reports?
What's the White House saying tonight? Have you gotten any kind of press release from Spicer? And what are they saying to explain that they're the crown prince of the White House, the son-in-law, who sits next to the president every day, the fact that he's under scrutiny now? How are they explaining that or denying that or what?
Well, I'm here at the White House, as you can see, and it's a sensitive matter for this administration. As you say, Chris, he is so close to President Trump. We've seen from tonight a flurry of no comments. That the Justice Department won't have much to say. The White House is not going to be commenting on an ongoing investigation. But you do see inside of this West Wing tonight and it's happened over the past week, a push to have some kind of new operation inside or outside of the White House to deal with these persistent questions about Russia and interference. The White House feels under siege, that they're getting too many questions every day that they can't handle. And so I expect, based on my reporting, some kind of move to be made in the coming weeks to highly organize the response.
I want you to go into this question and put it together. You're good at this. Let's talk about what's happening now. The pressure, the front page of your newspaper, and right across the country, right-wing, whatever kind of newspaper is going to have Jared Kushner, the crown prince, the son-in-law, under FBI scrutiny. This is huge. And the president's overseas coming back to that news. Then we also have this story floating out there, which you just mentioned. They're putting together a war room. Only this isn't a war room like in the days of Clinton in '92. This is a war room to play defense on the law to keep these people from losing power. And my question is, Corey Lewandowski coming back, Steve Bannon coming back. These are the bad boys. These are the guys that Trump even had to push aside. The fact that he's bringing them back, these tough guys, what's it going to look like in terms of press relations, in terms of getting the truth out or keeping that truth from the public?
Dogged, confrontational, tough. It's going to be a difficult moment, perhaps, for the press, because when you look at the people the president is surrounding himself with in private conversation right now, Bannon, of course, is already in the White House. But pay attention not only to Corey Lewandowski, the hard-edged campaign manager of the past, but also to David Bossie, the former congressional investigator who was highly involved in different investigations on the Hill for Republicans on Bill Clinton during his presidency. He's now talking regularly with the president about how to respond to this crisis, how to build some kind of operation. And these, as they say in the political world, are knife fighters. They come in to fight, not just to settle the score and just to calm things down.
Robert, hold off there. I want to bring in Jay on this, Jay Newton Small, because this is a story that people have to be updated on. David Bossie is a villainous figure from the Democratic side perspective. He's the guy that did the documentary on Hillary Clinton, which became the whole story of how they got to spend any dollar they wanted to spend.
Exactly. I mean, I just think this is
Citizens United. The whole thing is from him. It is an attack on Hillary.
Yeah, exactly. The whole digging down of the campaign finance laws. But I just think that this is, Trump has had such a great week in Europe, such a great week in Israel and the Wailing Wall and in Saudi Arabia. Like, for once, he's on message. And this is going to be a real test when he wakes up tomorrow morning. Is he going to reach for his Twitter, and is he going to immediately explode over all of this breaking news? Is he going to go off message and completely derail?
Is this a nerve ending for him, Kushner?
Yeah.
If you go after his son-in-law, you're going after his daughter. You're going after somebody that he may just explode over.
Imagine how each of us would feel if one of our family members were under scrutiny, which really means under investigation by the FBI. It's monumental. But remember, the White House said they're hiring street fighters to fight this. They already admitted it's not lawyers, it's street fighters. And Jared Kushner is as close as you can get. And now Trump must feel
Put it together. So what are they going to do to Mueller? They're going to say Mueller is a lowbrow. He's tainted. He's some kind of Democrat. They're going to call him, what is it, lion this, lion that, crooked that?
He's the, it's a witch already. It's a witch hunt, and Robert Mueller's leading the witch hunt.
That's what they say.
Go down from there.
Well, it's not a witch hunt. It's a search for the truth of what was the deal between Trump and the Russians during the campaign. We're watching, by the way. Let me ask you, Robert, about the context of Kushner. The president took a little heat, I don't think enough, when he brought him in as his special advisor, son-in-law. It was a nepotism situation. Whatever the law is, that was nepotism, pure and simple. He had no background in government, public life, elected life, appointed life, and yet he's given him the portfolio of the planet. The planet, not just the Middle East, the planet. And he sits next to him, and now the guy is under the spotlight of the FBI. How's Trump going to react tomorrow morning when he wakes up, God knows where, over the somewhere in the wrong time zone?
Well, Chris, you're a student of history. I can't find in recent years anyone like Jared Kushner in the federal government, except perhaps for Bobby Kennedy when you had him serving as Attorney General for a president candidate. You have Jared Kushner. I wouldn't say he's running the world, but he's a confidant. He's there as a senior advisor. He's involved in domestic and foreign policy. He's not the linchpin for the administration when it comes to ideology, but he's someone who's an operator for the president, relationship building abroad. You see him working closely with Netanyahu in Israel, with different leaders in Western Europe. So he is someone, if he goes or if he has to have a lesser role, that will have consequences that sweep across this White House.
Well, you're an expert at this. I look at the White House staff, and I see the people in the outs. I look at Reince Priebus there, who doesn't look like he's on the ins anymore. Maybe he
Well,
has a
he's still
little
chief of
bit.
staff.
I know he's got the title. I'm not sure that was ever a reality. And you also have Spicer, who wasn't even allowed to meet the Pope the other day. He's being treated like dog, whatever. Clearly, the guy who never seems to go down a notch in importance is Kushner. He's blood. The rest is water. Is that right?
That's true. I don't try to overread situations like Spicer not meeting the Pope. Who knows the background of some of this? But I think you're right that Kushner is someone who is a first among equals when it comes to the senior advisors. He is someone who everyone in this White House that I've spoken to treads lightly around. They know he can walk up into the residence at night to talk with President Trump in a way that others cannot. He's the one who's with Trump next to the president on the plane, was next to the president on the plane during the campaign. He's the whisperer. He's the one who Trump turns to make things happen.